Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett has thrown down the gauntlet on state public employee pension reform. During his budget address last week, the governor asked lawmakers to approve changes to the pension system that could save $300 million for the state and school districts next year. Pensions are likely to be a top priority as the legislature gets to work, but they won't be the only issue on the table in Harrisburg. And back with us today to talk about it are State Representative Mike Turzai, the House Majority Leader, and Dennis Yablonsky, CEO of the Allegheny Conference on Community Development, which of course co-produces this program. Welcome back to both of you.
Thank you very much, Bill.
All right, you're both there in Harrisburg last week to watch the governor's address, and he did, announce his program. Pensions front and center this year. Is this year to make real progress in that issue, Mike?
Bill, I think so. He actually ended his speech on moving liquor sales into the private sector and public pension reform. And I've been out front on both issues. I do think that public pension reform is on the plate. I think it has to get done. We have to move Pennsylvania into the 21st century on both fronts. And we are talking about new hires. We think that the agreements we have with existing employees and retirees need to be honored.
Kind of have to honor the promises that have been made, right?
Yes, yeah. But I do think that we need to turn off the spigot and change things and be more like the private sector, to a defined contribution or a defined contribution-like program for new hires. And Dennis has been the leader on this across the state. I think it needs to be true for the municipal level as well as the state level, and if we're going to do it, we might as well get it done.
It's easy to want to take on the whole enchilada at once. I mean, the stakes are pretty high, Dennis, for the taxpayers, for the Commonwealth, for our competitiveness.
No question about it. I mean, this is a huge budget issue for the state, for all school districts, and for almost all municipalities across the state. And we've talked about this issue on the show many times before, so I won't repeat all the statistics, but Mike's exactly right. I think the window is available to not only deal with the state issues, but to deal with the municipal pensions at the same time.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you about liquor too, but you're really thinking an election there, though? This is a big thing, and there's going to be a lot of debate, and I'm sure a lot of opposition to change. You can kind of move this big a piece of legislation in an election year?
I do. I just think that there's a sense, I hope it can reach across party lines, that it's not sustainable if we don't make the changes. And this year's budget in particular, whenever they talk about, we do a balanced budget. We do it on time. We've done it for the last 3 years. Our revenues have to meet our expenditures. We don't get to print money like Washington, D.C. And but in our projections for the upcoming year, revenue is short behind what our expenditures are, what our typical expenditures are. And the governor wants to make an increased investment in public education, which is fine. I think the block grant initiative is outstanding. But the projected hole going forward is largely created by an increased responsibility to pay for public pensions.
Wow. So it just starts squeezing everything else we want to do.
Everything else you want to do is squeezed by that increased obligation for essentially a $50 billion unfunded liability, that's not all paid out at once, but it's there. And the only way to really change it is to move into the 21st century, and new hires have to get a different type of, like a defined contribution type approach.
Speaking of moving into the 21st century, how about liquor and the state store system? You took a run at it last year and weren't able to get it done.
Well, we passed it. Yeah. And so the House has passed it with 105 votes.
Well, okay, so you got your part done. Harrisburg collectively.
Yes, we're waiting. Right? We're really waiting for the Senate to move on it. And it's been there since last spring. It's a 2-year session. We would have liked to have seen them move on it this past fall of 2013. They had not. Again, we just think it's a bipartisan effort. I was just at a recent, this is just true everywhere I go in the state. It doesn't matter what people's backgrounds are or where they're from geographically or age, work. Everybody says, aren't you guys going to get out of this liquor system? Every state around us is private sector. Every state, Maryland, New Jersey, Delaware, New York, Ohio, and West Virginia, they're all private sector. And it's just a matter of having the political will. There's no singular way to do this. It's just a matter of having the political will to do it.
Okay, only about a minute left, Dennis, but I do want to touch on one other important issue, and that's the, sort of the tax climate in Pennsylvania. I'm sure in a tough budget
that's
year,
important.
business taxes become a real tempting target for,
Yes.
for the legislature. How important is that issue, do you think?
Well, it's very important. We were very pleased that the governor's proposed budget does include a continuation and a completion of the phase out of the capital stock and franchise tax, which is kind of a remote issue for most people, but we're one of the very few states where businesses get double taxed. They get taxed on profits, of course, and they pay a lot of money on that, but they also get taxed on their assets, which is this capital stock and franchise tax. There's been a commitment now for almost a decade to phase it out. It's been slowed down a couple of times. Last year there was an agreement on when it was going to be done by the beginning of 2016. The governor's proposed to finish that, and we will be arguing strongly for how important that is to our competitiveness and our job creation environment.
And I know, Mike, you've been a real champion of the whole business tax improvement in Pennsylvania with a lot of progress in recent years.
We have. You know, look, without the conference and the state chamber,
your
we
leadership,
wouldn't be able to do it. But we've been able to increase the limit on net operating losses, and we went to single sales, and I think it's benefited employers like United States Steel, Hershey, Procter & Gamble, all important employers in this state, and then the ancillary businesses that come with it. But Dennis is right. The capital stock and franchise tax, which is a second tax, and it's on value, not on profits, it needs to be eliminated. And the phase out that really we worked out with the governor and other leaders, we're really pleased to see that the governor's sticking by it.
Okay, great. Well, State Representative Mike Turzai, good to have you back. Have to have you back as all this unfolds. Dennis Yablonsky from the Allegheny Conference. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And next up, what's just a few days down the road at the Pittsburgh International Auto Show? Stay with us.